Welcome to Fine Art Diary. Today we are going to paint this pond water step by step. So let's jump into the painting. For this particular painting I am going to use this 16 by 12 inch 10 ounce canvas board. And before doing anything, let me introduce my color palette. I am using Artist Acrylic color, and today the colors I am going to use will be Titanium White, Cad Yellow Medium, Yellow Ochre, Permanent Yellow Medium, Vermilion Red, Crimson Lake, Deep Magenta, Cobalt Blue, Ultramarine Blue, Cerulean Blue, and I am using two natural colors. One is Raw Sienna, one is Paynes Grey. So let's jump into the painting. Here I am mixing a mid-value color by using blues and yellows. Also I am mixing a little bit of raw sienna. Give it a touch of crimson lake also. Here we are ready to start. We are painting shallow water, so the underneath surface will be visible through water. This is what we are trying to paint now. It is a mid-value color and definitely it is not too much chromatic. I will keep this layer little bit dull and the upper layer will be much more saturated than this layer. At the same time, I am adding variation to the color. You can see I am working with blues and greens, and this time I am also adding a little bit red to it, just to create variation from the base layer itself, and this will be visible in our final result. Now adding a little bit yellow to it. This will be the ground where the sunlight is directly hitting the surface through the water, and that is the reason I am adding yellow to this area. In the foreground, stones will be there, and that is the reason I am making this area a little bit darker. Sprinkling a little bit water to it so that blending colors will be easy for us. Acrylic colors dry very fast, so we have to keep the layers moist to work wet into wet. Once again adding yellow to it to give the hints of the sunlight. Alright, now the entire painting is the water surface, so throughout the painting reflections will be there. Now with a dark value, I am going to block in the dark reflections. At the very beginning, my color layers will be very thin and transparent, and gradually towards the end the color layers will be thick and opaque. You can mix a beautiful green out of cerulean blue and cad yellow medium. And at the left hand side of my composition, the sunlight is hitting and that's why I will try to keep this area a little bit more chromatic than the right hand side. Alright, now let's block in the log lying down on the surface, and for that I am mixing a color of ultramarine blue, deep magenta and a touch of raw sienna. The blocking will define the size of the object and the composition of the scene. So now in this stage, if the blocking is correct, later on in the final stage also, the scene is going to look correct. Here I am emphasizing the shadow of the log inside the water. Alright, now let's mix the color for the log. So I am using raw sienna and Payne's green, yellow ochre, touch of white. Let's add a little more yellow ochre and also mixing the reds. Now let's get into the painting. Alright, we have got the position of the log, and now let's add the cool bounce light to it, and for that I am adding cerulean blue and white to it. Now you can see the log is getting the volume. Coming back to my dark color, and I will try to establish the volume shadow of this log. Now you can see, little by little, the log is getting its volume. So once again I will explain what exactly I am doing. First, I painted the mid value of the log, so I got the composition. Now I added the lighter part of it, and now I am establishing the dark of it, so automatically the log is getting its volume. Adding a little bit raw sienna to this color, and my next step will be to establish the stones. You can see how randomly I am positioning the stones. Now taking the darker portion of it, and I am filling up the in-between part of the stones so that it will create a sense of the depth. I will continue doing the same thing throughout the foreground. It has to be very random, not very precise, because nature is very random. You cannot predict a particular portion or a particular size of the rocks or the stones. And that is the reason, with a very spontaneous brushwork which has created the stones, later on definitely I will come back to these areas and I will block in the individual stones, but for now your brush stroke has to be very spontaneous. For now, I'm just planning the position of the stones and nothing else. While painting, maybe you were taking reference from a particular area, but whatever is there in the reference, everything you are not going to paint. You have to compose your own painting, and then only it will be called as an artwork, otherwise not. Now let's block in the light areas of the stones, and for that I am using titanium white, raw sienna, and a touch of cobalt blue. You can understand I am mixing the complementary colors to get a beautiful grey every time, because till now I am not painting anything very chromatic. Later on I am going to use some of the areas, especially my focal area, with the maximum saturation of the colors. So similarly I am blocking the lights of the stones, and that also very randomly. Still it is very spontaneous. I am not thinking too much. Once again, changing the color a little bit to get the variation, but you can see still the color is grey. Previously it was a little bit towards the violet, and now it is towards the green, but still it is a grey color, just to get the variation of the stones. At this stage, one thing to remember, the stones coming towards the camera will be a little bit bigger than the stones receding towards the background. Then only it will create the sense of the perspective. We are painting shallow water, so some of the stones coming out of the water, so I am going to emphasize that, and for that I am mixing titanium white, our blues, and a touch of crimson lake, and a very little of raw sienna. Now let's try to emphasize the stones. Here I am adding yellow to it because some of the stones are getting direct sunlight coming from the gaps of the leaves. Maybe there is a tree just beside the pond. Now emphasizing some more rocks in this area. Now let's add the darks to the stones, and for that I am using ultramarine blue, deep magenta, Paynes grey, touch of crimson lake, and let's start creating a volume by adding the darks. I'm trying to create the volume of the stones. You can see simultaneously I have started working with two brushes, one with a dark tone and the second one with a lighter tone, and I'm working wet into wet. So I'm applying the dark part of the stone, and now I'm changing my brush and I'm applying the light part of the stone, mixing the dark color and light color together in the canvas itself, and it will create the volume of the stones. I'm not going to do for each and every stones like this, but some of the stones, so that it will create the sense of the detailing here and there. Alright, you can see I have exaggerated some of the stones here and there randomly, and now I am also going to paint some stones towards the left. I am just giving the volume shadow to it so that it will create the illusion of the stones underneath the water. And I'm just giving the hints of the shadow, and that's all. Later on I will come back and I will add some light here and there, but you don't have to add any detailing to these stones. I'm also planning to keep some of the areas sketchy so that it will not look like a photograph but will look like a painting. Now let's add some color variation to the stones. Mixed a kind of grey-green color and will highlight some of the stones. Mixing another color to create harmony in the painting, and all the stones will look different in size, also in color. Now let's add the highlights to the stones. So I'm adding titanium white, a little bit of ultramarine blue, and a little bit of red. The highlight will add the solidity of the stone. So this layer is definitely very important. This layer defines that the object is receiving the light. We don't have to be very precise. A touch of light will create the plane of the light. You just need the touch of your brushes, and that's all. It has to be very, very spontaneous. Now let's add some highlight to the log, and for that I am mixing some blue and crimson lake with titanium white. For now, I am adding the bounce light like the stones, and later on I will come back and will add the warm highlight to it. The middle part of the log is inside the water surface, so let's paint that area with a darker value. With the highlight, I am adding some tiny detailing also. Now let's add the highlights to the log. Alright, now it's time to create the water surface, and for that I am going to use Viridian and Indian Yellow. Now why am I using these two colors only? Because both these colors are transparent, so by mixing these two colors I will create a beautiful light green color, and I will apply all over the surface, and the stones will see through this green color, and it will create the effect of transparent water surface. So let's take Viridian and a touch of Crimson Lake, and can you see we are getting a beautiful greenish violet color, also adding a touch of Indian Yellow. Let's start painting the water surface. Let's add a little more yellow to it. You can see from now itself it is looking like the stones are inside the water surface, and this is what we wanted. So I will leave some of the stones, and some of the stones will be inside the water. You should not paint all over the surface. Alright, now let's paint some tree reflection on the water. Here I am using a very narrow round brush. You also can use a flat brush and can give bigger strokes than this. Now you can blend the strokes by using a blending brush like this. Taking a little bit lighter color and doing the same thing, trying to create the hints on the trees getting the sunlight, and that is reflected back on the water surface. I am also adding some smaller detailing of the ripples over here. Also adding some dark lines in between. Now let's add a branch in this area, and maybe I'm going to paint two birds over here. Alright, now let's paint a broken part of a branch. Now a bird will be sitting exactly at the top of it. And let's paint another bird. I'm painting the negative space so that the birds will be exaggerated. Now adding the touch of the highlights. Alright, now you can see with some brush strokes I have got the volume of the birds, and I am also feeling to add another bird. Maybe later on I am going to add it. Now let's paint the sky reflection on the water. You can see I am painting the negative areas of the stones. I will not cover all the stones with this reflection, but some of the areas I will paint the reflection of the sky. With these tiny strokes, I am thinking how the water is flowing through the surface, and accordingly the sky is getting reflected on the water surface, and in between some obstacles means the stones are there. Now I am doing the same thing in this side also. let's add the highest specularity to it. We are towards the end of our painting. I am adding highlights wherever it is necessary. Alright, now I thought of adding another bird over here. So extending the branch a little bit more. Now I will try to paint this bird with a very limited brush strokes. Actually, this bird is hanging from this branch. So let's add some highlights to it. Adding the beak of it, the tail, and two tiny fingers holding that branch. Alright, my painting is ready, and here is the close-up of the painting. The materials I am using today, the entire list I am giving in the description, you can check it out. If you want me to paint a particular subject, you can write in the comment box. I will try to make a video on that particular subject. Hope you enjoyed the session, and don't forget to subscribe the channel for the future videos. Thank you very much for watching.